So as we know, AI isn't something that's coming in the future. It's already here, and it's already reshaping how we hire, develop, and engage our people. The pace of change can feel a bit daunting at times, I think, but the big challenge for us in HR is how we shift from kind of dabbling with new tools to really using AI as a strategic enabler. So in this episode, we're going to explore the key opportunities and risks from ethics and trust through to leadership development, talent management, employee engagement. And we'll look at how HR professionals can equip themselves with the skills they need for the future. And to help me unpack all of this, I am delighted to welcome one of the leading voices in people analytics and digital HR, David Green. Hi, David.
Hi, Lucy. Thanks for having me on the show. Looking forward.
We've been trying to arrange it for a while, haven't we? And then
we have.
But we're here, and I know it's going to be a really good one. And you know, you've been at the forefront of analytics and digital within HR for some time now. I think way before everybody else was talking about it. Can you kind of just give us an overview of your career and what inspired you to create your Digital HR Leaders podcast?
Well, thanks, Lucy. And again, obviously, thanks for having me on the show. And thank you for being on my podcast, the Digital HR Leaders podcast, earlier this year. We're a role reversal now, so you get to ask the question. My career, it started way back in the 1990s, and I kind of came into HR through recruitment. So I was a recruiter, moved into RPO, did that for a few years, and then went to the south of France. I'll come back to that in a minute. And then after a bit of time, I pivoted into people analytics. So that was around 10 years ago, spent some time at IBM. But what really inspired me to get into that was actually my time in south of France, outside HR, working for a travel technology company called Amadeus. Amadeus collects lots of...
Whereabouts in the south of France were you?
I was working in Sophia Antipolis, just outside Antibes. Got married down there, and both our children were born there as well. And I sometimes wonder why we moved back to the UK, but we did. We obviously like the rain. And Amadeus collects a lot of data, a lot of travel data on behalf of the travel providers, their clients, airlines, travel agencies, etc. And it's traveller data, basically, business travellers, leisure travellers. But particularly on the business travel side, they would provide insights back to the travel providers around that, which the travel providers would then use to personalise and create products themselves. And it just kind of made me think, why don't we use some of this data that we collect in talent acquisition, as I was thinking at that time, or in HR, better? Because I wasn't aware of any companies using analytics at the time.
And the weird thing is that actually it should be a lot easier to get data on our employees than it is on our customers. I remember doing a thing. I was working with doing some work with a bank in Australia, and in their foyer, they'd got these amazing kind of customer persona, based around real in-depth insights, and yet had nothing on their people. And yet it should be the other way around, because that should be the easy data to get. Sorry, anyway, I interrupted.
No. That's a very good point. And I think
fascinated you.
And I think we could probably have a conversation about HR being 10 years behind marketing. Marketing became a database function much before we did. Maybe we've got the opportunity to do that now in HR, and some HR functions clearly are. So I was inspired to do that. So I moved back to the UK in 2011, did some research and found out, okay, there were a handful of companies using people data to help make better business outcomes, better talent decisions. Google was obviously the poster child at the time. There were a couple of others as well that were around, but not many. And I kind of got passionate about that, doing what the RPO stuff I was doing at the time. RPO is quite a low margin business. So how can we make ourselves more effective? But also what insights can we provide to our clients as well? Eventually that took me to IBM, and the passion became a bit of a vocation. And then back in 2017, Jonathan Farrar, who I'd worked with at IBM, together with a couple of people, we set up Insight 222. So it's a specialist people analytics professional services company. We work with over 120 organizations, global organizations. We help them put people analytics at the center of business, and we do that for a variety of services, including our people analytics program. And then the podcast, which is the last part of your question, we started that in 2019. I think we've produced over 250 episodes now. Speak with, probably like you, Lucy, I speak with CHROs, senior HR leaders, leading thinkers like you in the space, analysts and some of the leading HR technology firms. And the objective really is to help HR professionals learn, help them become more digital, more data and AI literate.
We're going to talk really more about AI than perhaps data and analytics, although I think, clearly there's a crossover there. But we'll have to come back together again and talk about the use of data and analytics in terms of employee persona, because I just find that the whole personalization piece and how the potential of that to increase relevance and impact as an HR function, I just find absolutely fascinating. And I totally agree with you about marketing and what we can learn from them. But let's dive into AI, which obviously is the hot topic right now, not just in HR, but across all industries. And we hear a lot about the speed of AI adoption. From your perspective, how fast is the pace of change in HR? And are we keeping up with the rest of the business, or are we lagging behind? And I know it'll vary depending on the company and the sector and so on. But generally, from the 100+ companies that you work for, what's your sense? Are we leading edge, or are we actually lagging behind the rest of the business?
I think the first thing to say, you said it in your introduction, the pace of change is daunting. And I don't think it's just HR that's struggling to keep up with the pace. And there's a lot of hype around. There's a hell of a lot of hype around. Whether it's at HR technology events or whether it's a general technology events, there's a lot of hype around, and it's quite hard to focus. I think it's a bit like what's going on in the outside world in politics at the moment. It's quite hard to focus because there's something different happening every day. I think we have to recognise that while we've been talking about AI for quite a long time, widespread adoption within HR is still relatively new. I remember reading a report by BCG back in the summer of 2023, so just 6-7 months after ChatGPT had launched. And their tagline was that, generative AI had done what no other technology trend had done before, and it accelerated HR's engagement with artificial intelligence. So we do an annual research study at Insight 222, and that kind of piqued our interest a little bit. So we thought we'd test that out. And last year, so 2024, we did the data collection in July, August. Report came out in December last year. And with the 2025 report will be out probably November this year. So the 24 study, we had 348 participating organizations. These are companies all over the world, large, small, all with the people analytics team, but this isn't a people analytics finding. And we found that 62% of those organizations were in their first year of their AI journey in HR. Yeah. And a further 18% hadn't even started. So it is new. We probably are behind marketing, certainly. I don't think we're that far behind some of the other support functions, though. It's behind, like we were with analytics a little bit. But the opportunity, as I'm sure we'll talk about, is massive. Not just in terms of reinventing how we deliver HR and personalize HR programs, as you talked about, but also how we help our organizations lead workforce transformation. Yeah. And probably, really importantly, be instrumental in ensuring that the AI that we use is responsible and ethical.
Yeah. I mean, we're not a research organization like yourselves, but we have our Disruptive HR Club, and we kind of are always checking in with our members, a few thousand members. And I would say even 6 months ago, when we would ask basic questions like, are you using ChatGPT at all? It was minimal. Within 6 months, that has changed. That has dramatically changed. But if you had to highlight, 2 or 3 of the most important areas for you where AI is really making a difference in HR, what would they be?
So again, I'll go to our research on this. Yeah. So we asked this last year. We actually asked people AI and generative AI, but I'll focus on the generative AI answers here. This is actually stuff that will come out in our report actually in November. I'll give you an early insight. Oh,
listeners, you're getting an early preview.
So we had more companies participate this year, 372. And we asked them, where are you using generative AI in HR? And the top 3 and probably not a huge surprise. Number one was chatbots, the employee assistants.
So that kind of efficiency, productivity piece.
Yeah, addressing those frequent queries, streamlining administrative tasks, and hopefully freeing up HR professionals to focus on higher value stuff and less repetitive stuff. I think that's the opportunity for us in terms of looking at our own function. Second one is around sentiment analysis of employee feedback. So, surveys have really gone through quite a transformation over the last 10, 15 years. And yes, most surveys still have those scales, whether it's 1 to 5 or 1 to 7 or other. But more and more surveys we're seeing, certainly from the companies we're working with, are having text-based comments, just like you do when you fill in a customer survey. And you can get deeper insights from that. Now, prior to large language models, lots of companies were having to manually or build stuff that would help them analyze those comments. I mean, you used to be a CPO, you probably had to read through thousands of employee comments when you're at the BBC.
You get a very expensive consultant to do it for.
Well, yeah, exactly. And they give you the results about 3 months later.
That's right.
So I think what generative AI and these large language models can do is can help you analyze that text much quicker. So you can get to the insights quicker, and then obviously employee listening is all about the actions, not the insights. So that's a good one there. And then augmented writing for job descriptions. So we all hate writing job descriptions, however many we have to write a year. So and these are the sorts of things that AI and Gen AI are good at doing, and possibly better at doing than us, as long as they've got good data from which to base it on.
Yeah.
And if you had to look at a function or sub-function within HR that is probably using this stuff more, it is recruiting and talent acquisition, who are typically at the forefront of
I mean, back to the marketing analogy, there are marketing arm typically, and in HR, and I think they've always been a little bit more aligned with some of the more progressive stuff, like the persona piece. They tended to be using it far more than the other areas of HR. So I think it's probably not surprising, particularly in competitive markets where you're competing for talent. They've had to up their game and can be a bit more progressive. It's really interesting that you mentioned the sentiment analysis, because I think that brings us on to the area of ethics and trust and analysing survey results that people have given, knowing they're going to be analysed, is kind of possibly less of an issue. But we also hear about sentiment analysis by reading emails and Zoom conversations and so on. And I was reading somewhere that there are concerns about, how is AI using it? Do we trust our leaders to use it ethically? What do you think are the kind of biggest ethical challenges that HR leaders should be thinking about when it comes to AI?
Yeah, I mean, the good news based on our research is that companies are thinking actively about this. So 52% of the companies that we surveyed this year have a dedicated focus on governance and ethics as it relates to AI models using AI HR. And that was up from 37% last year. So that's good. So it's moving in the right direction. And a lot of the companies we work with and their people analytics teams, they're playing a leading role in this. And it comes a little bit from GDPR. So they've already been thinking about how they govern the use of people data. So some good practices, I think. Let's maybe... we're both consultants, so we like to do things in threes. So I think first, ensuring responsible AI implementation through building a foundation of trust and transparency with the workforce, creating clear policies on tasks that are best for humans versus AI, in parallel with ensuring that the AI guides, but humans must decide sort of thing. Actually tell your employees what data you're collecting and why, and what the business reason for it, and what the potential benefits are to them. So, I don't know, for example, if we're using AI to infer skills from all the various data that we've got within our systems, explain to employees why we're doing that and how that can potentially support them with career and development opportunities within the organisation, and how that potentially can actually have a positive impact on their compensation down the line. Second challenge, I think, and this is a big challenge, I think, is moving from a jobs mindset to a task and skills mindset. AI obviously doesn't replace entire roles. It automates specific tasks. The ethical puzzle for HR, I guess, is to influence the organization, not to make short-term decisions, to cut jobs wholesale, which we're seeing in some headlines, that we should be trying to use AI to amplify human potential, free people up from repetitive tasks to do more high value work. Thinking about maybe the new tasks that are going to be created because of AI. If we go back to every other industrial revolution we've had, yes, that technology has replaced tasks and it has replaced jobs, but it's created new ones as well. Yeah. And according to the World Economic Forum's Future of Jobs, by 2030, AI will have created, I think, 78 million more jobs than it will take. But it means huge disruption, of course. And that's where us as HR professionals, workforce planning professionals, have got a really important role to help steer our organisations along that bit. And
there about transparency, clarity, and giving people the option. They're grown-ups at the end of the day. And, if they choose not to reskill, or if they choose not to get engaged with it, then potentially the consequences are more damaging. But equally, as you rightly say, the potential is huge in a positive way as well. I was reading about IKEA and about how they knew that a lot of their customer services assistants their roles would be replaced in large part, not entirely, as you say, but in large part by chatbots. And so they looked at how can we reskill them using AI for kitchen design planning, etc. Because it's not that you have to be a designer, but it's how do you use the AI tools. Now, not everybody's going to want to do that.
No.
I think as long as people feel that the organisation have thought about this and that they are looking at alternatives, and this is not just, right, great, we can cut 80 jobs here, or some of the other bigger consulting firms that we've been reading about recently, much more wholesale than that. I think if it does purely get linked to job cuts, then there's immediately a fear factor there that's going to make it problematic. But I think that transparency and co-creating the solutions with people, I think, is at least in part how you can get round some of that trust issue.
And it has to be said that some of those large consulting firms, we won't name them by name, of course, reportedly they overhired during the pandemic. And I wonder if, this is just hypothesizing now, I wonder if some of them are using AI as an excuse to let people
go.
Or
is it just a journo using it for clickbait? Because it's a better headline.
It could be that as well.
Exactly.
I'm conscious that I didn't give you the third.
Colleagues on from the BBC. But anyway, and your third one around...
Yeah, the third one was really... I also think that, this is probably an HR perspective, as that shift towards skills and tasks, we probably need to look at the organisation chart that we're still using, which is from the 20th century, and actually think about consigning that to the waste paper basket of history, perhaps, and coming up with new org designs. I think that's an opportunity for us in HR. And then the third challenge I suppose it's quite linked, is to balance that drive for efficiency with the need to preserve the human experience. I guess the challenge for us in HR in particular is to use AI to both enhance productivity, but also to foster authentic human collaboration and connection. So we need to try and design systems that allow that to flourish.
Yeah, and I think that kind of when is the human best, I think that will change dramatically as AI gets better, wasn't it? There are clearly obvious, we've all had those interactions with chatbots where you think, oh, dear God in heaven, let me speak to a real human being, because this is gobbledygook and rubbish. But it's getting better. And actually, if you can get automated responses and engagement and a conversation that is helpful and 24/7 and immediate and is better than perhaps if some of the humans having an off day, then those lines around when is a human going to always be better will move and shift, won't they? And again, just keeping the conversation going with your people.
Yeah. And actually, it's interesting, Lucy, when I was at IBM, so this is going back a few years, but IBM had early chatbots within the organisation then. The Smarter Workforce research team, obviously not just in IBM, they looked at this and they found that people are quite happy to interact with chatbots to get personalised information. It's when it's personal, when we come to an HR help desk, that they want to speak to a real person. And I suspect that's probably would be similar now. If you want to talk about something very personal, maybe a health issue or something, you probably want to talk to a real person rather than a chatbot. But maybe that's just my demographic saying that.
But equally, what we find acceptable may shift. I think.
You're right. as it gets better, and actually sometimes it's hard to tell, isn't it?
Yeah, completely. So stepping back a little bit and sort of, how do you see AI acting not just as a tool, but as a genuine strategic enabler? And I think we began to touch on some of that stuff when you were talking about skills and design and so on. But we've kind of probably emphasized more on the productivity side and replacing some of the things that humans are doing. But as a strategic enabler, what are your thoughts on how AI is developing in that space?
I mean, HR's been on a journey. I mean, you know this better than me, Lucy, having led HR at many organisations. We've seen that HR's kind of moved from that support function of the past to being much more a strategic partner to the CEO and the business. We really saw that during the pandemic, and AI gives us the opportunity to take that maybe to the next level if we're able to be bold and grasp that opportunity. So I think, if we can automate most, if not all, of the repetitive work that we do in parallel with helping the organisation transform successfully and leading that workforce transformation journey for the organisation, that seems like a double good opportunity there for us to do that.
Yeah.
And again, possibly a bit biased because you'd expect me to say this coming from the people analytics kind of angle, but our research suggests that companies that have developed strong capabilities in people analytics are likely to be much more successful with it deploying AI in HR. It kind of makes sense. And we see a lot of the people analytics leaders that we work with being asked to lead or co-lead the AI strategy for HR within their companies as well. So, so I do think, so work with your people analytics team, I'd say, as a CHRO. And if you don't have one, build one. And then the last one was we talked about the governance and ethics element. But I think another one is about investing in strong data foundations as well, which, we need to do. You can't do AI. You can't provide personalized recommendations to people about learning pathways or learning opportunities to career pathways. You haven't got good data behind it. So there is that need. It's a bit boring. Most people find it very uninteresting, but we do need to invest in good data foundations to really help AI to flourish, certainly from what we're delivering in HR. So, I mean, the two opportunities: lead workforce transformation, reinvent HR.
Easy. I'm just going to pause for a minute just to mention our Disruptive HR Club. And I talked a bit about it earlier. We've got thousands of members, HR professionals who want to do things differently, not just AI stuff, but, all aspects of the employee life cycle. And in the club, they get tons of resources, live and on-demand training to help them do it. And this week, we launched our own Disruptive AI agent, which we are really excited about. And your point there about, making sure that it's pulling in on the right data. So it's based around all of our books, all of our thousands of toolkits, all of our live sessions and so on. So it's really about kind of having that disruptive HR consultant 24/7. So we're very excited about that. And if anyone's interested in checking out the club, then just have a look at our website, disruptivehr.com. And obviously we'll put links in the show notes, as well as how to get hold of David and maybe even a link to last year's research, because we won't be able to do this year's research. Right, let's have a look at some of the kind of key areas, taking a bit of a deeper dive. Let's have a look at, first up, leadership development. And, this is obviously an area where we've often relied on traditional assessments, leadership development programs. How are you seeing how AI is changing the way we identify or develop or support leaders? What are you coming across that's exciting?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing to say is I'm not an expert in leadership development here. So what I'm going to say is very much based on what we're hearing from the companies we work with and guests like you that we've had on the podcast, Lucy. It's pretty clear that AI has the propensity to change how we do leadership development. Hopefully we can move from those kind of rigid old school assessments to using data to identify maybe hidden talent within the organization and future leaders. So AI can certainly help develop personalized, in the flow, development journeys, give leaders real-time coaching and support. and digital coaching. I think that's a big opportunity for us with leadership development.
Huge. I think that kind of pocket coach, we're seeing quite a lot of companies exploring with that, because we know that putting leaders on a leadership development program, that kind of classic sheep dip, everybody one size fits all and is expensive. Leaders don't want to take the time away from the day job. So I think that kind of prompting, nudging, and particularly if you can link it back to pulse survey data that their employees have given feedback on, that's really exciting. I think that's really quite progressive. What about employee engagement? Again, we've typically used the annual survey. Are you seeing AI being used to help kind of reimagine how organizations are listening to their people?
Yeah, I mean, we talked a little bit about surveys earlier, didn't we? So it's definitely enhancing employee survey analysis, obviously, by able to apply natural language processing to analyze large volumes of text. We also see companies using tools to interpret things like emotional tone and sentiment behind employee communications. Obviously, doing this not at the individual level, at the aggregate level, I guess, to get some insights from that. Back to the ethics conversation. We've seen companies analyze data from employee collaboration tools like Slack or Teams or email or others to understand what drives collaboration, innovation, burnout, maybe inclusion, and more within teams. And when you've got that data set and the survey data set, it's sometimes when you combine the two, it gives you some insights that you wouldn't get from looking at one. So it's a great example.
That's a really important point, actually, because I think with people data, people are obviously incredibly complex and nuanced entities, aren't they? And just an engagement survey with a bunch of questions is always going to raise more questions than it answers. But if you can then combine this, back to marketing again, they're very good at this, quantitative, qualitative, observation, sentiment analysis, emotional tone, etc., and pull together, it creates a story, it creates a narrative that I think is much more exciting than leaders getting the annual engagement survey report, which, we've all been there when maybe you haven't, but I've been there trying to get them to take it seriously and engage with it. Whereas actually, if you can tell a story about it and what they can do to enhance, then I think that's really exciting.
Yeah, I mean, a great example. I mean, Microsoft is a great example of the stuff they're doing around employee listening because they publish articles about it. And I've been lucky enough to have Dawn Klinghoffer, who leads people analytics at Microsoft, on my podcast a few times. And, we've seen, through the various episodes we've done, we've seen how Microsoft looks at thriving, for example, over engagement as an important measure. They've seen how, as we've moved out of the pandemic to now, how that journey around hybrid has gone. They're looking at survey data, asking a lot of questions around engagement and thriving. They're looking at some of their badge data, again, at aggregate level to understand how people are coming into the office. They've looked at things like when people need to be together, and they found that's when you start a new role, when you're kicking off a new project, and then kind of bringing people together deliberately to manage social cohesion. Yeah. And recently they've announced an update to their their flexible work guidelines, and they found that the people that spend more time in the office are those that are thriving, and they found that thriving connects with business performance as well. So they've been able to update that on that. And it's a very contentious topic, hybrid, as you know, and forcing people back into the office. But I think at the end of the day, if companies are making decisions based on data, not opinions, not the CEO saying you want everyone back in 5 days a week.
To be back in the office, or we've got this big office, I want you to fill it. I think it's very interesting that, I've always been a kind of huge advocate for hybrid, but I think the argument's becoming much more nuanced now. And it's always very personal. It's contextual. It's what's the work that you're doing. And I think instead of this very blanket approach that many organizations have taken, which is 3 days in, 2 days out, or vice versa, which pleases nobody in the end, is actually to kind of get under the surface of what it means to work in a hybrid way that can be really effective and powerful. And I think that's where the data and the insights that we're now gathering can come in. I'm conscious of time. I've still got a couple of questions. So you still all right?
I'm still all right. Yeah.
I think let's kind of take a look back at the HR profession and, all of this change, all of these new tools and products and ways of doing things and language and, terminology. And, it can be very overwhelming for HR professionals. I just wondered, when you look at the clients you work with, the work that you do, what would you say the core skills HR needs to develop to stay relevant in this AI-driven world?
Yeah, I mean, this is important. As HR professionals, we're always advocating that, continuous learning is really important for people in the organizations, but we have to remember ourselves as well, particularly now when there's such a big transformation going on. So I had to think about this one. It was good, and it's partly based on some of the research that we've done at Insight 222 around data literacy, but then I tried to apply it from an AI perspective. So, I mean, there's a few. So AI literacy. I mean, we must be knowledgeable about what AI is. So not just HR professionals, every business professional, what it can do, how it can be applied in HR and across the business. So I think that's one. And I think it's probably new. You could argue it was data literacy before. It still is data literacy, by the way, but it's now AI literacy as well. Second one, stakeholder influence. I don't think that's changed. We must be able to translate the value of our work into the language of the business. And this means using data, AI, and insights to consult with and influence leaders, demonstrating how HR strategy is directly enabling business outcomes. So that's really important. Change leadership, particularly given everything that's going on. So surely one of our key roles in HR is to guide the workforce through this transformation, help people embrace new ways of working and prepare them for the skills of the future. So I think there's that one. That's
three. I think you made the point earlier about the old reorg, looking at the org structure and perhaps, shuffling the deck chairs around. That's not going to cut it anymore. And that, that kind of ability to redesign organizations from an AI perspective and through an AI lens is something that I think, certainly the HR leaders that we work with, that's quite new and quite something that I think is going to take some time to get there.
Yeah. I'd agree. And I think part of that, as we redesign work and maybe the operating model of work, human-centered design. So we've got to design HR systems with the end user in mind. We can't have rubbish HR systems now and technologies and with bad UI. No one will use it.
No.
So intuitive, personalized experiences that feel as seamless as the best consumer apps.
Yeah.
I was talking to a company the other week, and they're basically building a front end on top of all the HR systems that they use. So as a user, you will only touch that front end. You won't touch anything else in there. And I think that could be the way forward. Everyone wants to be all the HR tech companies want to be interacting directly with their users. Yeah. I think many of them will be at the back end as we move forward. And then two more skills, storytelling. Yeah. So with AI generating insights, the real skill lies in crafting a compelling narrative. If storytelling is a skill all business executives need, and we're not any different in HR. And then the last one is emotional intelligence. Mm-hmm. So it's the ultimate human skill. And in a world of increasing automation, our ability to foster connection, empathy, and a strong culture is even more critical than it's ever been.
And I think that's really exciting because we've been talking about human HR for ages, but actually we've been an incredibly process-oriented, policy-driven, compliance and nursemaiding function. And actually AI really does enable us to play to our strength. Our superpower is that we get people, we get human beings. And that at the moment is not something that AI can replace. It can enhance, but it can't replace it. And I think for all those people who went into HR because they actually enjoyed working with people and for people, it's kind of our time now, and I just think that's really exciting. If someone was sitting on this, listening to this and they're thinking, oh God, I'm so far behind. I haven't even started. My kids are using ChatGPT, but I haven't even really given it a go. Where would you suggest they begin as an HR professional? What would you just say? Look, just do this one or two things. What would you suggest?
So I think from an individual level, use it, get familiar with it, experiment.
Play, isn't there?
Experiment with it, and then learn how it can help you become more efficient and productive. I mean, if you just use it once or twice, you'll think, oh, it's not very good. But,
I ever used it. I used it like Google.
And don't use it like a search engine. It's different.
What's the hype? This isn't as good as Google. And then my business partner, Karen, who's much more progressive on these things than I am, she was like, no, you haven't got it at all. Think about this prompt. And suddenly it was like, wow. That's
a skill, being able to ask good questions. It's always been an important skill, but it is a good skill for this as well. So that's the individual level. Use it, get familiar with it, get confident with it, experiment with it, put yourself on a course. I mean, there's loads of free courses that you can find from the big technology providers. Obviously, it's in their interest that people get familiar with it, but some of the courses are really good.
Yeah.
And then from an organizational level, as an HR professional, think about the main business. We should always be thinking about this. Think about the main business priorities of the organization that you work in that are related to people. Identify up to 3 potential use cases for applying AI in HR. Get a business sponsor for each. Start small, learn and iterate. And that's pretty much the same advice I would give if you asked me the same question about people analytics if you were getting started. So start small, connect it to the business, and adopt an experimental mindset. I think
that's absolutely right. Choose a pain point. It's got to feel relevant and interesting, and it's got to make sense to the business leaders as well. We've run out of time. So where could people reach you if they're listening to this and they're thinking, oh, God, I really want to get hold of the research. I want to find out more about what David and Insight 222 do. What's the best way people can get hold of you?
Well, the firm, if they go to insight222.com, and you'll find our research there. If you click what we do and then click research, you can download all of our research.
And I'll include all these links in the show notes. So, and if they want to contact you personally, is it LinkedIn?
Personally, LinkedIn's probably the best, although there is quite a lot of messages on there. So feel free to follow me on LinkedIn. I publish a monthly newsletter, Data-Driven HR.
I always read it.
And then, if you like Lucy's podcast, you want to listen to another one to complement it, feel free to tune into the Digital HR Leaders podcast as well. There's
just a whole legion of podcast hosts who just go on each other's podcasts like we did.
Apparently I'm told by podcast providers, and this isn't why I'm doing it, by the way, Lucy. I'm told it's a good way to amplify the podcast and your potential new listeners. But yeah, I mean, you and me have been doing podcasts for a while. It seems like everyone's in our space is doing a podcast now. So I appreciate for listeners, there's a lot to choose from.
Absolutely. David, thank you so much for being our guest today. It's been a real pleasure. I've loved it. Thank you.
It's always a pleasure talking to you, Lucy. Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks for watching. To get more videos like this, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications.